If not, let's go fishing. Wallace, I thought about you when I was thinking about this. Let's go fishing. John chapter 21. If you will turn there with me. Let's just look at it for a second. Jesus has been returned from the grave. He's been on earth back a couple weeks at least. He's appeared to the disciples at least 2 times, and he's appeared to other people. But Peter here says, and after these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and on his wise showed he himself. There were together Simon Peter, and Thomas called Didymus, and Nathan of Cana in Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, James and John, and 2 other of his disciples. And Simon Peter said unto them, I go a-fishing. You know, back in those days, you fished at night. You used nets. You fished and you would throw your nets toward the bank and you would bring the fish in. And that's what they did all night. Now, if you read in there a little bit, I don't think Peter wore any clothes while this was going on, because he had to clothe himself later on in this chapter. But they fished all night long the traditional way. And you know what they caught? Nothing. And it says here, and Simon Peter said unto them, I go a-fishing. They say unto him, we also go with thee. They went forth and entered the ship immediately, and that night they caught nothing. But when the morning now comes, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples knew not that it was Jesus. Then Jesus said unto them, children, or friends in some translations, have ye any meat? Did you catch anything? They said, no. And he said unto them, cast your nets on the right side of the ship, and you shall find. And they cast therefore, and now they were able to draw it from the multitude of fishes. Therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved, which we know as John, said unto Peter, it's the Lord. And when Simon Peter heard this, he girdeth his fisher's coat on him, for he was naked, and he did cast himself into the sea. They said this boat was 200 cubits out in the water. A football field is 230 cubics. So it's a little less than a football field out. And they saw a man, and they've now recognized it to be Jesus. When I talked on this once before, we talked about being at the wrong place at the wrong time. They were. Jesus told them to cast their nets in the morning. You don't fish in the Sea of Tiberias in the morning. You fish at night. He said, throw it out the right side, out into the deep. You don't fish in that sea that way. You fish toward the bank, and you cast yours to the left, to the water. But they did as Jesus said, and they caught so many fish, they couldn't get them in the boat. But as it goes on, Peter dived in and went to the bank and was talking to Jesus, and John and the other ones brought the fish in. Jesus was on the bank cooking. Some commentators or readers want to know, where'd the fish come from? Jesus was cooking fish and bread. You know what? Jesus did many miracles. I believe he could come up with a fish and some bread. Don't you? And he said, let's eat. And as I said before, they were about 100 yards out. The wrong place, the wrong time, but Jesus' time. Sometimes we want to set Jesus' time for him and everything. There's many a time that I want to tell Jesus what in the Lord what I need to do. And sometimes it doesn't happen. But it's Jesus' time that will do that. Now, an interesting fact here that I've used many a time, Jesus said, how many fish did you catch? Does anybody know the number of fish in that net? I know Brother Scott probably can tell me. 153 fish were in that net. The Bible doesn't tell us things for no reason. You don't put stuff in the Bible just to be there as a filler. Everything has a purpose. In those days, there were 153 species of fish known to man. How many fish was in that net? 153. What's he telling them? You've been serving and talking to Jewish people, which is good. But I want you to cast your net on the other side. My side I'm telling you about, to 153 different species or other people, me and you. He was telling them to go all over the world and spread the word. Let's go fishing. And he said, I am going to make you fishers of men. And they went after, and that's where it was spread through all over. Brother Gibson and I had a long talk about these. And he said, Roger, that's me and you. We're those other species that he told them to go get. And he said, let's eat. And they go through. And of course, one last thing on this part, and I'm through with this one. It was, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea. The good ones were kept, and the bad ones were discarded. That's in Matthew 13:47. One day that will happen. Now the second part of what I'm going to talk about tonight, when Jesus said to them, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. I'm going to take you back to 2012. Vicki, Molly, and I took our second journey to China. The first time we'd gone through Hong Kong and around other ways. This time we flew into Beijing. I have never seen anything like that in my life. 13 and a half hours of flight. And we landed in Beijing. And we spent about 2 weeks getting ready to get Cali. For the first time, I got to go to the Great Wall. I thought I was in pretty good shape. Molly didn't weigh, I don't think, very much at all. But we went to the Great Wall, and when you go to the Great Wall, you have different ways of going up it. Well, our leader took us to the hard part. There's one way we went back the last 2 times. We took the family side, and we did all right. But this was the tough wall. And we started up that wall. I was packing her, and Vicki was in the lead. I made it one section, and I quit. I couldn't go any further. The steps sometimes went straight up. Sometimes they were this high, sometimes this, and sometimes that. And you had to get down and go. And I had a little girl I was holding, and I couldn't make it. She went all the way up and went out of sight with us. I don't know how far she went up. She can tell you the number of steps she took. But I sat at the bottom, and I didn't know I was such a celebrity. Every single person took my picture holding her. I think it was her instead of me, but here's a big fat guy holding a little Chinese girl, and they thought it was funny. And everybody took my picture. I'll have to tell you one little side note there. We went to a restaurant, and the lady come out and put the thing around my neck, and she was going to feed me. And I looked at her and I said, ma'am, I think I can do it myself. And I asked the question, what's going on? In China, the royalties are big people. At that time, I weighed probably 50 pounds more than I do now. She was going to feed me because she thought I had a whole lot of money because I was so big I had to be rich. But she didn't get that much. But we eat everything, stayed 2 weeks, and it was time to go home. And as we started out, the first time I think we flew home from there back somewhere. This time we took the van from Guangzhou, China to Hong Kong. It was a wild ride. He got there with us. When you come, you don't know that Hong Kong is not a part of China? I didn't know that. Some of you did. But you have to cross over the border. And I thought, I don't know what they're going to do. Whatever they tell me, I'm going to do. But we pulled up to the border. All the doors of the van went up all the way around, and they screened us. This machine come out and went through the whole thing. And they said, fine, and we went on through. We went into the hotel, which was the biggest thing I've ever seen. We were hungry, and we went to the inside the restaurant, and they had a buffet set up. Well, I'm not too quick on the counting of 7 times money, but they told me that the cost of the buffet was $1,030 something, yen, or whatever they call it there in China. It comes out to $150. I'm cheap. I was not going to pay $150 for a buffet meal. I think we eat sandwiches, and I don't know what they ended up costing us. But a side note to that was, on that buffet, they had a pig, Lanny, a country ham, and they had a stick stuck in the top of it and in the ground, and that pig's hoof was still down here, and it was set up, and he would carve the meat off and give it to you. I was amazed. And then we walked over to the shrimp. They weren't shrimp. They were bigger than my hands. They had eyeballs. I said, I'll eat my sandwich. But getting to my story here, we left the next morning. We took our luggage, went down the runway to the airport. It connected to the airport. We had 2 girls, I don't know how many bags of luggage, and me and Vicki, 5 bags of luggage. And I'm pushing it, going down through there, and it goes right into the airport. We found our place. We said, praise the Lord, we're going home. Hours later, we're still sitting there. Hours more. I don't know. We spent most of the day. And they moved us to the other end of the airport. And we had to go sit down there for a while. And finally, I asked a question, what in the world's going on? And they said there's been an earthquake in northern Japan, and the sky is so full of ash that we can't fly through it, so we had to wait. But we're getting you ready to go. We're going to fly you to Tokyo, Japan. And from there, we'll go home. Hong Kong has built an airport in the ocean. They used to have one in the middle of the city, and you would go up and you would fly straight down and land. It was dangerous. So they bought dirt in China, in Hong Kong, and filled in the ocean. And they made an airport go out into the ocean. It's something like one of the names is a spring, because when your plane lands, it sinks down a little bit. Because they put dirt. You ever thought about how much dirt it would take to fill up the ocean to make an airline, the runway? But we flew out of there, and we're heading to Tokyo. But we're 2 to 3 hours behind schedule or more. And I looked over at Vicki and I said, I don't think we're going to make our next flight. Now, this is a story I'm going to relate to Brother Gibson. I told him this story. I may have told some of y'all. But we start to get ready to go into Tokyo, and I look at my watch, and the plane is boarding that we're supposed to get on to fly to where? Chicago. Better memory than mine. I said, we're not going to make it, but we're going to try. 2 kids, 5, 6 bags of luggage. But of course, they took care of all that. We got off the plane, and they were lined out the door to immigration. I said, there's no way we're going to go in 10 minutes to get on that plane. And I turned around, and Vicki and I turned around, and there was a man standing there. Dark skin, white uniform, white hat, properly dressed. And he said, folks, are you having trouble? I said, yes, sir. Our plane is boarding, and we don't know where it's at, really, and we got to go through all this. He said, follow me. That's all he said to us. Follow me. We went with him, holding girls. He walked us to the front of the line of immigration, and in good English, he said, let them through. They're mine. Follow me. We got on an elevator. We start going down, and you know me, I thought I knew where I was going. I said, sir, the plane's that way. And you're going this way. We're already late. He said, no, your plane got moved. You are now in this section. Follow me. I said, okay. Kept my mouth shut and walked. We come out of the elevator, and the very last terminal was where our plane was at, and they're ready to shut the doors. And he said, halt. Hold the doors. And we run as hard as we can, pushing strollers. And we get there, and they look up, and it says, you must take your temperature. If you have a temperature, you can't get on the plane. We didn't know with two young girls, they'd been not really sick, but we were worried. They passed it. We all had the perfect temperature. They said, you can board. And Vicki and I turned around and said, thank you, sir. There was no word in there. It was a wide open area he took us to, and when we turned around and said thank you, he was gone. To this day, we don't know who he was or anything about him. All I heard him say was, follow me. And we followed him, and he went there. Brother Gibson and I sat and talked, and he said, Roger, there are angels among us. You just met one. And I said, Brother Gibson, I can't doubt it, because where that guy came from, I don't know. But he told us that, and just remember, we need to follow Jesus. It may be the wrong place, the wrong time, but it's God's time. And that's all I've got for you tonight.